So NASA finally launched their rocket. They started off with fuel out to here, but in one turn they used it all. They're dry. They're using the regolith thruster though, which means they can sort of drift their way down here, and they actually managed to get much further than the green player. They took a risk, however. Their rad hardening of 1, their thrust value was 4, still is. So their thrust value was low enough that with the radiation, there was a chance that they could have lost their radiators going through the Earth's radiation zone. You take these risks in this game, sometimes, especially when you're behind. And this one looks like it paid off. Now, we don't know until we see what the NASA rocket actually gets, but at least they got out further than anyone else has, and maybe you'll take advantage of something that way. They still got the UN to go with. And the UN just refueled, pumping their level up a little more. At the very least, if they do just turn around and go home, they want to bring as much fuel back as they can so they aren't losing money by doing so. Then again, they're only pulling 2 per refueling effort, so they can make that much money by selling cards off. So it went around another time, and the ESA is at Earth trying to fiddle around and get themselves something that's workable. I think they've got it down here more or less, but they're tinkering around with the fuel to boost it. The PRC thinks they have a rocket ready, but they still need fuel, and they're playing with cards to do it. The Shimzu are also playing with cards. They're trying to get the cash together. Their rocket is really questionable going through the radiation band, and they're going to make an offer to the UN. Right now it's being negotiated. It's probably going to be, the UN wants 2 or 3 water, and the Shimzu have like 1 to spare. So there's kind of a debate there. They might end up getting a card that'll help. NASA, well, without any fuel, they're kind of slowly chugging their way into this little family of asteroids, and the UN continues to mine water. They're still not sure what they want to do with it, but their current thrust value is so low out here because they're reliant on the solar power. So the Shimzu launched and actually made it through the radiation belt. They had to cut through here because they get 1 extra thrust there. So they were up to a total of 3 thrust plus the 1, and their 1 really dangerous thing gives them a 4. They could not come to an agreement with the UN. So the Shimzu moved and went through this space, doing the Venus flyby to slingshot and give them a little bit more power. They couldn't change directions without burning 1 fuel and actually 2 fuel. And that's all they got left, so they want to make sure that they can get, and this is their goal, and that's going to take 2 fuel, or that's going to take 1 more burn, 2 fuel to get to. However, time passed because they went through that, but they rolled a 4 on the event table, meant that everybody had to discard their heaviest object in low Earth orbit, and that's kind of painful. We saw the ESA drop one of the cards they really needed up there. The PRC lost something that I don't think they needed. I hope not. I don't want to think too hard. And NASA dumped the big Robonaut that they probably should have never launched. Oh, that's not a... That's only a 2. Hold on. They dumped their refinery. That's a pity. They don't have a refinery on their current ship. Unlike... Nobody's got one launched. The PRC thinks they can get a refinery out there. They're the people who least need one, but... anyway. Okay, NASA found more nothing. To put them up there with the UN. And... speaking of the UN, they spent their 2 burns flying along here. 2 events, one of which would have been a glitch, which would cause problems. Player would have to decommission one of his cards that's in a stack without crew, but he has a crew there because his crew doesn't weigh anything. This is kind of weird that the Shimzu crew, which is equally useless in a lot of ways, has mass. That bothers me. I think that's almost a mistake. But it's a big bonus for the UN being able to fly without a crew. Now, or to send their crew on missions without paying the weight. Most of the crews have tools that make it greatly, that give them certain advantages, such as these big booster rockets. But that's something that neither the UN nor the Shimzu have. And the Shimzu's advantage, of course, is their crew comes with a laser, a ray gun. It's cool and all, but with a 4 ISRU, it's not really all that effective. The only difference is they can lay claim to these really big items and then figure out how to get to them at some later date, unless, of course, the PRC goes there. So that's kind of their movement goal, but my feeling is, hey, it's better to build your rocket and not waste the mass on a crew that can't do anything. So anyway, the UN's challenging the Shimzu here. I'm not sure who's going to get there, but that definitely is a factor. And we got the sunspot cycle in kind of a dangerous place for those people who have low radiation hardening. Okay, the ESA started things up, dumped some more shit into space, and yeah, boosting with their action. Same thing with the, they still don't have what they think is a useful rocket, but they've got a lot of stuff up there. The PRC, remember, I thought they had a useful rocket before. Well, they still put more up there. They're pretty sure they have one now. But they got a lot of cards up there, and this is huge for NASA. I mean, as people have to just keep putting more and more stuff up there, NASA's getting lots and lots of cash. That may not continue at some point soon, just because all the cards are already in space. I think this is a planning problem for the most part. Let's go to the Shimzu. With their low fuel, they had basically I think they have one fuel left, actually. They had been in a situation where they could not make it to the shift and through the burn. So they knew, and as was the case, the UN would land on this site. Now, so they shifted over and decided to hit this little chunk. just a matter of being, they'd be lost. Well, they'd be able to land and refuel, but they would have come in second, and since they're not the PRC, that doesn't really help. NASA worked on refueling. So, and in this case, the Shimizu and NASA, I believe, both sold cards, as did the UN. Just to no, NASA shot a refinery up into space, but the UN and the Shimizu both played cards back to the decks to get some cash. Unlike NASA, they don't have this unlimited cash flow. And the kind of exciting news, the UN finally found something. They're probably going to head back. They've got a victory point token from before. They've got a claim now. There's only so much they can do with this one rocket moving because they don't have a refinery in place yet. So they're going to have to buy a refinery and set that up and set up a rocket to get there. And they're going to have to do it before the Chinese steal their claim, which is going to be kind of tricky because the Chinese can probably put together a rocket that can grab the claim a lot faster than they can put one together that can go out and find something and set up a whole refinery. Unfortunately, they've been setting up for the latter because nobody's been getting any successful claims, and they don't have a lot of water left. So unless they can maybe sell some of that stuff they've got in space, which is actually pretty valuable at this point because it's all been boosted already, there's not a huge advantage to their ability right now, and it may be that the UN can get back and actually exploit their claim before the PRC can just go steal it. We had an event because orange moved through here, so all the comments moved again. And the event was no event.